Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Love Alchemy. I'm your host, Tamara Hansen, and this is the place for transformation and discovering your divine self. Today, we have a special guest on the show. We have Brenda Sharp here with us. Brenda, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Tamara. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes,
Thanks
so
for inviting me.
excited.
Yes.
So excited. So Brenda is a hypnotherapist, and she's going to tell us all about what she does first, and then we're going to launch into the topic of the day, which is entity attachments. So it's very exciting. So Brenda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, well, I'm a hypnotherapist, certified clinical hypnotherapist, a master hypnotist. I'm a psychic, which I became at a very young age, basically 3-4 years old. But I blocked it at that time. It wasn't until I took my training that my psychic abilities went whoosh, and I was not expecting that. But I've learned to live with it and accept it now, even though I did block it at that particular time, and it was for a reason. I also am a Reiki master, and I do mediumship work, channeling work, and a little bit of whatever seems to be out there, it seems, that I am connected to. So.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot of education and experience under your belt. You've dealt with so many things. I've known Brenda for a very long time, and she has many stories to tell, and she does have a book coming out, hopefully in the very near future, that will dive deep into a lot of her past life history, and which is very exciting. So very excited to see that in the very near future. But if you're ready, let's go into entity attachments. This is a very interesting topic. I don't think that a lot of people know about this, and this might be a bit of a shock for some people.
Yes, it's been a well-kept secret, either through the churches and the governments and whatnot, as well as people who don't believe in it, but also are afraid of it.
Yes.
And the work that I have done, because I was never a religious person, yet I believed in God and spirituality and whatnot, but it has given me an open book, more or less, to accept things the way they are and to deal with them and work with them. And I've just trusted myself and what the universe has given me as far as the knowledge is concerned with what I do. And it's been extremely helpful. And not only to myself as far as a therapist is concerned with doing this type of work, but also for my clients as well. Yeah. It's been life-changing for them.
Definitely. So what are we looking at when we're talking about entity attachments? Like what are they, and what's the deal with them?
Yeah, well, they've got numerous names. Entity attachments, they're ghosts, they're apparitions, they're demons, they're whatever you want to call it. It really doesn't matter what we call them. All they are people like you and I that have passed over either tragically or suddenly or just naturally. But lots of times what they do, they get stuck on that ghostly plane, and because there's unfinished business with something here on earth, and usually it's their loved ones, or might even be somebody that has murdered them, or an unknown accident, whatever the case may be, that people don't understand. Or lots of times we pass on because we're ready to and we want to, for whatever reason, a suicide or whatever the case may be. But if there is unfinished business, either on their side or the people that are left here on earth, they stay on that ghostly plane and they're not able to pass through the light. So that can be extremely devastating, because they can stay there and get stuck there for forever.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not a good thing, and we want them to pass through the light and carry on with their journey regarding past lives, but also coming forward into their new lives as well.
Right.
So it can be extremely frightening when you first look at them or talk to them or whatever, but just remember, they're no different than you and I. They're just people that have died.
Yeah.
And lots of times that message can be as simple as "I love you," and once they've said that to you, or once you were able to say that to them, they're ready then to pass through the light, and they have no other issues, but that keeps them stuck there. So when we don't deal with that, whether we were too late getting to the hospital, or they died suddenly in a car accident, or they died in surgery, and we weren't able to say goodbye to them because we didn't know that they were going to pass on. Yeah. So we're grieving on this side hugely, and we want them close to us and to stay close to us, and we want to see them in that past, since they've passed, as an apparition or whatever, or talk to them or whatever, but that still keeps them stuck there.
Yeah.
They can't move through into the light, and that's what we all need to do.
Yeah. So when we're talking about how we weren't able to say goodbye, but also they weren't able to say goodbye, or able to say where the money is hidden in the mattress, or
yes.
or whatever the case may be.
Lots of times there are messages that have to be passed down, and that might be the key is under the front doormat to the safety deposit box, or my banking was all done at the TD Bank, or whatever the case may be, or it's under the mattress, or whatever. So there's a lot of information that comes from the people that have passed on. Not only that, but a lot of mysteries are solved through this as well. I had a client actually whose husband, the police decided that he died of a suicide. And when I went in with my client, it was her husband, she saw that he was holding a gun, but it was in his left hand, and the man was right-handed. So she knew at that particular time that he had not committed suicide, but he sort of had an affair, and it was that woman. But again, that went into their past lives, and there was unfinished business in their past lives, and that's why they came together in this life, was to finish that off. So, who knows what is connected to what.
Exactly, and that will definitely be another topic in the near future about past lives, because that is a whole show in itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so with entity attachments, and so are all ghosts or entities, do they attach to us, or can some hang around and they just want to be with us?
Yeah. And usually it's because there's unfinished business, or they want to pass through the light.
Okay.
They're done, and they don't want you to grieve for them anymore. They want you to let them go.
So can you have a conversation with somebody that has passed through the light? Can you call them in and have a conversation with them?
Absolutely, at any time.
It doesn't mean that they're attached to you, though, right? Or that they have unfinished business. It just means that you can still have that connection.
Yes.
With them.
And lots of times, if they are a ghost, they don't realize that they're a ghost, because if they've died suddenly, they think that they're still here. So what ends up happening is they will rattle blinds, they will play instruments, they will start the stereo going, lights will flash on and off, they will kill anything that is battery operated or electronic, whether it be computers, printers. They play havoc with all kinds of stuff. I've had curling irons that would stop, irons, toasters, everything would just quit. And it was due to entities.
Yeah.
They're very forceful in wanting to be heard and paid attention to. And at that particular time, I didn't realize I was as psychic as what I was. But they knew that. And they were trying to get my attention and wake me up to the abilities that I do have regarding speaking with them.
Right. So can or are entity attachments always people that we know, or can they be somebody else.
Oh, they can absolutely be anybody. Lots of times entities will attach themselves to you because you may know somebody that they knew in a past life, or lots of times they just come to you. I had one under my kitchen sink because they liked all of my kitchen utensils, and he actually ended up he was a chef years ago, and of course they didn't have all these modern conveniences that we have now, and he thought this was great fun. There's blenders and all kinds of different types of things that he could use with his cooking and whatnot. So he wasn't ready to pass on. He really liked it here in my home, but I said it was time for him to leave. But and it's easy to send them on. All you have to do is tell them what year it is and that they have passed, and that it's time for them to pass through the light. And lots of times they go off really easily, and other times they want to speak to somebody else. So I ask them, okay, who is it you want to talk to? And I pull that person in, and they have their little conversation of I love you, or whatever the case may be. And I ask them then one other time, are you now ready to go? And away they go off. And it's so relieving for everybody. It's relief for the ghost. It's relief for the person that needed to say their final goodbyes. And it was a relief for him to leave my kitchen cupboards alone.
So in some cases, they're not even aware that they've passed because it could have been sudden or whatever, that they believe that they're alive still.
Yes. Actually, another incident is a fellow that died in a sudden car accident. He was about 17 years old, or some teenager. He was of driving age. But anyway, he passed suddenly, and his home was close by to where the accident was. So, of course, he went into the house, and nobody was there, and including his parents, because they had moved on because of the tragic accident that was so close to the house, and just all the memories in the home and whatnot. But they had left a chest for hanging up clothes in the daughter's room down in the basement, and the new owners that owned the home, they found it very scary to go down into this room, and it was cold and clammy and whatnot, and they didn't like going down there. And I said, oh, you have an entity attachment. So they said, well, can you get rid of it? So I walked down and I asked who was there, and it was this young lad, and he was looking for his sister because that chest belonged to her, and it was always in his bedroom. So I told him that he had passed in a sudden car accident, and that he was dead, and that it was many years ago, and that it was time for him then to pass through the light, and off he went, and that was the end of the feeling in that room and whatnot.
Yeah. So once they go to the light, there's no way that they can come back to attach. No, they can't. They're no longer a ghost, and the business has been tended to, so they stay on the other side and they move forward with their life. They can be reincarnated or whatever the case may be, but they can still communicate with their loved ones. Right.
I mean, we can still talk to them, but they're not in that ghostly plane any longer.
And kind of in limbo in a way.
Yeah, I call it they're stuck in hell, actually, because it is. Because they can't move forward and they can't come back. Yeah. So they're stuck in hell, and they don't want to really be there.
Yeah.
And some are there, and they've made the best of it by attaching themselves to people, and that can create a lot of havoc too. So
so how do we get them? It's kind of like a parasite.
Absolutely it is.
So how does it all happen?
Well, actually, when we're in a subconscious state, and that can be just before you fall asleep at night, just before you wake up in the middle of the night. It's when you're daydreaming and you've decided that you wanted to see something on the way to downtown, and you drive right by it and don't even realize you've driven by it, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I forgot to look at or to whatever. And that's because you were in a subconscious state. Your mind was elsewhere. It wasn't consciously thinking about having to look at that. So when we're in a subconscious state, that's when they enter our bodies. Now, you can be in a subconscious state when you watch a program or a documentary on TV, when you're reading a horrific thing on the newspaper or in the newspaper, or reading a book or whatever that may be. You also can go into those subconscious states. It's like when you read a book and you've read every word on that chapter, and you get to the end of the chapter and you think, I can't remember a darn thing that I read. And what it is your mind goes elsewhere. You're in that subconscious state. And so when you go back and you read it, oh, right, now I remember. Because our mind does not forget a thing.
Right.
We have the biggest computers that are known to man right in our heads, but we don't know how to access it.
Right. Yeah.
So
we're not utilizing it.
We're not
fully.
utilizing it, and we have a lot of power there that we're not aware of.
Yeah. For
So, those are some of the ways in which they can enter our bodies.
So are there certain people that are more susceptible than others, like
Yes.
kids, or maybe people on certain medications or
drug
recreation
induced?
drug-
Yeah, all of
okay.
that.
Or let's say going to the bar and getting drunk.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what about kids being so open to that?
Okay, well, first of all, when they come over, they're still in tune with the other side. And so they know how to talk telepathically, and they know what ghosts are, basically, in a very simple form. And they haven't been told that they don't exist, or that, there's nobody sitting in that chair. Why are you talking to that chair? Whatever the case may be. And a lot of people with religious beliefs and whatnot, of course, we have that aspect as well, that,
Right.
it certainly changes our way of thinking, which of course is maybe not what is. So we don't want our children to talk to ghosts or imaginary people, but they actually do, and they're very connected. And that's when ghosts need to be released, because they're there for a reason, and they can create havoc, and they can also enter into that child's body and create all kinds of havoc for them as well as entering adults' lives. And when we're in that subconscious state, whether through medication or drugs or liquor or daydreaming or in the la-la land, whatever you want to call it, we're totally susceptible to that unless we block the entities from entering our bodies.
So back to the kids, how do we know, we want to protect them, especially them. And so if they're talking to their imaginary friend,
Right.
That's an entity.
Yes.
That's a ghost or what have you. And how do we want to assist them with that? We don't want to discourage them from from closing off to opening up to those experiences.
Right. Well, ask them who their friend is and why they're here. And then have your friend or your child or whatever the case may be, let them know that they have died and that it's now time for them to pass through the light.
Okay.
And your child can communicate with them, and they can hear them as well. So have your child be the middleman, so to speak.
Okay.
And you direct them to the light through your child, and have your child say, it's time for you to leave now and you can't come back.
Yeah.
Because I don't want you in my space anymore.
Right. So,
and if it's a loved one, if it's a grandparent or mom or dad who has passed on, ask them what it is that they need to communicate to your child, or maybe to you.
Yeah.
And the child will say, Daddy loves you, or whatever the case may be, and he wants to talk to you. And that's when you can seek out help if you can't communicate with them directly because you're not open to it. And that's where I come in, is to help people communicate with their loved ones that have passed on.
Right. So with the kids, when we don't want them to be afraid of what they're experiencing, and so that they can't sleep at night or what have you. So, or even experiencing a moment with their grandfather who's on the other side, you want to make sure it's a positive experience.
Absolutely.
Right? So that they're not afraid of those things or shut themselves off from utilizing that gift.
Yeah. And I mean, some apparitions can be scary. If, if they've been in an accident or something, they may still have those wounds upon themselves and whatnot. And there may be people that the child doesn't even know, and it can be scary for children. So that's when you need somebody, again, like myself, that would go in and have that entity pass through the light if they are scary. If they're loved ones, generally children especially are not afraid of those. Yeah. But if it's somebody that's creating havoc and is there for alternative reasons, and they're angry because something happened to them and they want to communicate to somebody, they'll go to the child because the child is very open to them and hears and sees as well.
Yeah, so with entity attachments, what are we looking for? Like there's signs and symptoms, but in some cases, appearances can change or shift, or behaviors, and you have an entity attachment, or to kind of touch on those sort of things of what somebody might experience and some examples that you've had in your past.
Right. Well, first of all, some people feel them coming into their bodies. It'll give you a jerk. I don't know if you've ever gone to bed and you're laying there and you're just about to sleep, and all of a sudden your body jerks. That's an entity attachment that has come into your body. Also, people will get an adrenaline rush, or the hair will stand on their arms. You get goosebumps everywhere. That is also an entity trying to communicate with you. So they've come to you to try and say, this is what I need to talk to you about. And I have that happen quite a bit to me. I can be walking past a car in a parking lot with somebody in it, and all of a sudden I get the rush, and there's nobody else around except for this person in the car. So I've gone back to them and I said, knocked on their window and kind of sheepishly smiled, and they unrolled their window, fortunately. And I said, I know this is a little odd or whatnot, but I just had a rush. I'm a psychic, and somebody is trying to communicate with you. Go find somebody that you trust or know as far as a psychic is concerned, because somebody is trying to communicate with you. And it's usually a loved one that has come and wants to speak to you.
So how do we know if somebody has an entity attachment?
Okay. Well, if they sleepwalk or sleep talk, those are entity attachments that have entered the body and taken over your body. You're sort of like a channeler. They come in and they can make you move and do things that you perhaps would not normally do. There was an instance where a gentleman got up in the middle of the night and climbed out of his window and went over and sexually abused a woman that lived next door, but had absolutely no memory of it whatsoever. And this child, well, he was 17 years old, but he was charged of sexually abusing this woman, but had no memory whatsoever of it. So those are instances that can happen. Also, I had other people that, a couple that came to see me, and the gentleman looked like King Arthur and the woman looked like Guinevere, dressed identical to it, their hair, everything. She was long blonde hair, had the real frilly type clothes on, and he had the beard and dressed very much like King Arthur would have. And as it turned out, I knew instantly that they had an entity attachment, and it wasn't their past lives, yet they believed that's who they were in their past lives. But we can determine that, but I'll explain that in another podcast. But what ended up happening was I released those entities. They had gone over to France and, of course, got wound up in the stories and whatnot. And, of course, they were in that subconscious state when they were there, and that's when those entities entered their bodies. And they came home here, and that's what ended up happening.
So then you went in and you assisted them with releasing
them. Yeah.
Okay.
Very easy, very simple to do. It's nothing scary at all.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely go into that in a little bit here about how to release them. So go ahead.
I was also going to say that people that have psychological disorders, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorders, those are also entity attachments. And again, very easy and very simple to release from them. But the medical industry, unfortunately, has looked at it in another avenue and usually medicates people in order, which only deals with the effect. the symptoms, whereas we go in and release what caused this in the first place,
Yes.
and it's entity attachments that they've been attached to.
Yeah, and if you know what, if more people knew about this, that this was available, I think we would have a healthier world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So over the long term, can this affect a person if they don't release anti-attachments over the long term? What are we looking at as far as, the King Arthur and Guinevere? Okay, that's one thing, but what about health ailments, or can that all become a part of this entity attachment if we don't release it?
Yeah, well, actually, I had another client who a person entered his body that had lost his leg, whereas my client felt that he had cancer himself, and it wasn't him that had the cancer, it was the entity attachment that had the cancer and ended up losing his leg as well.
Yeah.
So it can be pretty scary for people, and a lot of diseases that doctors cannot diagnose, they can very much so be entity attachments.
Okay.
And to release that. And also, at another date, maybe we perhaps could talk about past lives and how they affect our diseases, and also what causes our diseases,
Right.
which is paramount. I mean, this world doesn't have to be in the state in which it is as far as all the medical issues are concerned.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I do believe that they like to keep us sick and not
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And
of
there's
what-
so much more.
Yeah, I mean, think of the pharmaceuticals and the money that everybody is collecting at our
Yes.
expense.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it has to
yeah,
come to
'cause
an end.
It's a huge money making
Right.
for them, and if they were to make people healthy,
Yes.
then they wouldn't be able to support themselves.
No, exactly,
What it comes
exactly.
down to, but
But we could be all healthy too.
we could all
and
be healthy.
We can create peace on this earth rather than the hell that we have created. And
Yeah.
it all has to do with releasing emotions and whatnot from our bodies and
Yes.
our past life issues and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's time to change. The world is shifting.
Yep.
And I can certainly see a difference in
Yeah,
it.
yeah, definitely. So now there are many paranormal shows. Okay, so before we dive deep into the paranormal shows, we're going to talk about migraines and headaches and what that all means.
Sure. First of all, another thing that creates disease are entity attachments, and they create seizures within people as well. Okay. And those are entity attachments, and also headaches and migraines. Headaches, if it's in one particular spot, it's an entity attachment that has attached themselves to you. If it's a migraine, and I had never had a migraine until I had gone to Niagara Falls, and my husband and I were walking from the hotel down to Niagara Falls, and instantly I was attacked with a migraine. And I said, "Take me back to the room." He did, and I informed him that he had to turn off all the lights and get the out of the bedroom. So he took off and did some sightseeing while I was laying in bed in total darkness and a cold washcloth on my forehead. I had never had a migraine before in my life, and I pity anybody that does. But as I was laying there, I was thinking to myself, Brenda, you idiot, you know how to release this. And so what it is migraines are a group of people that have died in one place. A headache is usually just one person. So what I did was, because Niagara Falls is a place where there was war and people died, and also people going over Niagara Falls doing maybe some stupid things, but also
Right.
people years ago did not know that they were there. And of course, if they were boating or traveling or whatever, just ended up going over the falls and dying. So I called all of them in, anybody that had been in the war and anybody else that had died around the Niagara Falls area. And I said, I need one person to come forward and speak for the rest. And I said, it's 2000 and whatever. I said, you've all died, and it's time now for you to pass through the light. Is there anybody that wants to come forward and say anything else or whatever? And he said, we all want to go. And so I informed them to walk up that beautiful flight of stairs and open the double doors and walk through into the
Yeah.
light. And that was the end of my migraine. It quit instantly, right on the spot. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I know this works, as well as I've done several people in sessions where an entity will come into them and create those headaches and whatnot, and we
Yeah.
release them right there on the spot, and that's
Yep.
the end of the headache. It's kind of like magic.
Right.
Yeah, and it's really easy and really simple to release.
So now lacking energy, that's another.
Yes, they can drain our energy.
Yeah.
As a teenager, I was totally wide open to all of this, unbeknownst to me, regarding any of this. And I would go to school. I had a hard time waking up in the morning, and also when I'd get home from school, all I wanted to do was sleep. So I'd go to bed, and then, of course, the phone would ring, and in my sleep, I would get up and answer the phone and make all kinds of arrangements with my friends, and as well as make appointments with my mom and dad and their friends. And as time went on, we realized that I was getting up and answering the phone and talking to people in my sleep, which was sleep talking and walking, and making all these arrangements and not knowing I was doing it. So, they can totally play havoc with you, as well as when I was a young girl, I had an attachment to me, and I got dressed over my pajamas and walked outside in the middle of the night. I had opened up the door. Fortunately, my mother heard it, and I was in bare feet, and it was middle of winter and solid ice on our driveway. And there I was out in my bare feet walking down the driveway, and they caught me and, of course, brought me home. And I had no idea as to where I was going. I had no memory of it, just of what my parents had told me about this regarding. But yet there was other times that I was aware of what was happening. And the one was I went out and I was babysitting, and I came back. And, of course, I came back when the sun was starting to rise, and I came in the house and got into bed, and for whatever reason, I put some clothes on over top of my pajamas, and I had left the key to getting into the house in my other pair of jeans that I had on earlier that evening as I walked into the house, but I had left them in this pair of jeans, and I went outside, and as soon as I locked the door, I realized that my key was in my other pants. So I rang the doorbell, and of course my dad came to the door, and of course the bathroom was right across from where my bedroom was, and he had gone into the bathroom, and I had gone into the bedroom and undressed and was back in bed, and he thought, well, man, she was fast getting into bed. And the next morning he said, so you forgot your key? And I said, no, I didn't. He said, yeah, you did. You rang the doorbell, and I came to the door and let you in. I said, no, I had my key. And that's again how we found out that I was sleep talking and walking in my sleep. So it can create problems. I mean, especially if you're all by yourself and there's nobody to bring you back in from the cold, so to speak. So it can be something of a problem for people. So
Okay, so then that leads to the next question of how do we protect ourselves?
Well, you can go to somebody that can release these entities. Or you can put a bubble around you, an imaginary bubble. It's like you're in a bubble, and you declare that is your space and nobody else can be there with you, and you make it big enough that it's arm's lengths above you, beneath you, on either side of you, in front of you, and behind you, and that only you can be in that space and nobody else. Okay. But you have to make sure that the entity is gone before you do this.
Okay.
So there are some tricks as far as having the knowledge in order to do this for people. And when you feel them coming, like when you get that jerk, just say, out of my body, you know, you don't belong here, get out, and whatnot. And let them go that way. And if they don't, say, why are you here? What is it that you need to say to me? And go through the process of letting them know that they have passed on and who they want to speak to, and bring that person in to talk with them, and then allow them to pass through the light. If they don't pass through the light, be very forceful.
Okay.
Extremely forceful.
So with with regards to that, like resolving this or being able to, so we can release it on our own by talking to them and being forceful with them. But what about those ones that don't want to leave, Brenda?
Yeah, again, just make sure that they've talked to whoever it is that they want to talk to and that they've communicated why they're sticking around, because there's always a reason.
Okay.
And try and resolve that. Bring in somebody else to communicate with them. Again, this is more hypnotherapy type work that I'm explaining to you. And I strongly suggest that you work with somebody that knows the paranormal, is not afraid of it, and can work with these issues with you, because it can be rather tricky if you're not familiar with them, or scary even though a lot of it is not scary.
Right.
It doesn't have to be scary. I mean, if somebody comes toward you, I had a client who had a person in a black cloak with the hood over them and carrying a sickle. Well, this person was terrified of this person, but yet when I was doing this session, because of my psychic ability, I'm right there with them and knew exactly who this was. And I started laughing. And I said, oh, I know who this is. Just ask who it is. And of course, she knew who this person was. But he had come through to explain that he had been in a past life with both of us, actually. And that he was the executioner at that particular time. And that he felt guilty because he knew of the innocence of the situation, and that there was no guilt there at all.
So before we go into in your own practice of hypnotherapy and how you help others, let's touch on about paranormal shows and how on TV shows that are paranormal hunters. Give us your take on that.
I don't think you want my take on this, because it makes me very angry and cross. Mm-hmm. Because they're no different than you and I. And they are people that are stuck. And people are making money off this and, bringing in machines and feeling the energy and whatnot. Yeah, they're going to feel the energy of those poor people that are on the other side. But they're stuck there and they don't want to be there. And they are trying to communicate to us that there's an issue here, whether it be to solve a mystery or to say goodbye to their loved ones, or whatever the case may be, or rectify something that is wrong. And so then they just leave them, they just abandon them, they don't send them to the light. They're just still stuck there for how many more years until somebody else comes along and does the same thing. And this is the same with psychics and channelers and mediums and whatnot. They don't resolve the issue of the ghost being there. They don't solve the problem of why they're there and what caused them to still be there. And they don't rectify that. And that's the work that I do. And so it really makes me angry and cross. And they just haven't been educated properly on what to do with these poor people that are ghosts or entities, attachments, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And it's not right. Yeah. And so then they keep on coming back and back and back, and nothing is resolved in the home or with that person or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, or in Alcatraz, where it's reportedly haunted, and these prisoners who passed on, they're still there. Yeah,
and a lot of them were innocent.
Yeah, so, and they're unable to leave, or they think they're alive.
Yes.
Or they have things that they need to resolve.
Yeah.
So
to tell the truth.
Yeah. So I guess the lesson here is that when we experience these entities or ghosts or what have you, that we should be helping them along.
Right.
Move to the light.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely
they can move on, because they have their own moving on to do, just like we have our own in this physical world, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good. And so now talk about what you do when somebody comes to you. They have an entity attachment. Talk about your process. Talk about how you help them out. And
sure. Well, first of all, I ask, is there anybody with you right now? And people will say, Yes, actually there is. I said, and what's their name? And they will come right out with the name of who it is. They'll say Tom, Dick, Harry, it doesn't matter who it is. And I'll say, and why is it that they're with you? And they will ask that same question, and the entity will answer that question. It's because
they want to be known. They want to be
they want to be heard.
They want to be heard.
They want to be heard, whether it be a loved one or somebody else. And they're looking to pass through the light. They're stuck. They're stuck and they don't know what to do. Yeah. And so I ask them right off the bat, okay, ask this person if they're ready to pass through the light. And the person will say, no, I want to talk to so-and-so. I want to talk to my mom. And so I will then ask the mom to come into our session, whether it's known to the person that I'm doing the session with. It be a total stranger, but this poor entity wants to talk to their mom, so they've come through us knowing that we are communicating at a subconscious level. And so I just ask, okay, now that the mom is here, I thank the mom for coming. And what is it now that you'd like to say to your mom? Well, I just want to say that I'm sorry, or I love you, or whatever the case may be. And after they've done that, I have them hug one another so that they feel that energy. And then I ask that person if they're ready now to pass through the light. And usually, immediately, yes, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
And lots of times they will say, no, I'm not ready to go because I want to talk to my brother. So I bring in the brother and they say the same things more or less. And then they're ready to pass through, or he is ready to pass through the light. So I send them off.
Yeah, and you essentially walk them to the door.
Absolutely, yeah.
To cross over or cross into the light.
Quite often I'll ask either the mother or the brother or both of them to walk up the flight of stairs with them and have them witness their son or brother that they have actually passed through the light. Yeah. And I always say that your loved ones are waiting for you on the other side of those doors, and they're more than willing to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, because they have their own reunion of sorts, right, on the other side. Right,
and usually the mother has passed on, or the father has passed on, or whatnot. So, or the grandparents, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But they're anxious to be with their loved ones again.
Okay, well that's awesome. And do you have any other words of wisdom for us, Brenda? Anything else that you want to share that maybe we didn't touch on?
Just the fact that this is very easy and very simple to do, and that we've created a lot of illnesses that are not necessary because of the not understanding what's actually going on with the person, and that this is so healing for people once they release these entities, and I just hope that they get the help that they need, and they're not filled with medications and having surgeries, brain surgeries and whatnot, lobotomies, you name it, that type of thing. It just scares the living daylights out of me. And to tell you the truth, I did work in psychiatry in the remand center, which was the psychiatric assessment of prisoners, as well as in the psychiatric daycare where people came, and a lot of them at that particular time. And of course I didn't know any of this back then, but I mean, we had people that had those lobotomies and whatnot, and I think about that now, and it just breaks my heart to realize what happened and what didn't need to happen. It was just that they were psychic. Yeah. And you know what? We're all psychic. Yeah. We're all capable of doing this.
Absolutely.
And it's part of life. It's just part of life.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that past history and maybe even now that we can't identify or acknowledge that those psychic powers, intuition, or entity attachment, that's a possibility. We're so focused on these very I want to say practical methods, for lack of a better word, but when there's so much more out there, and that we can tap into to help people. And Brenda, you and what you do is just amazing. Well, amazing stuff. Yeah, so
I appreciate that.
So before we close out, any anything else that you want to share?
I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak and to get these messages out, because they're paramount to our future, everyone's future. And there's a lot of businesses that have made money on this, and it's wrong. It's totally wrong.
Yeah.
And this needs to be fixed.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we've spoken about this before, that we are seeing changes happening and that the world is waking up to the possibilities, and we've been kind of lied to over the years, right? And we're now seeing what's possible.
Yeah, and I really want to give kudos to Oprah for bringing a lot of this spirituality to the forefront, and for it's usually women that are connected more so than what the men are. And I'm not saying that men are not, but women are probably a little more open than what the majority of men are. And also religion has, I hate to say this, but they've hypnotized everybody with their prayers, because a prayer state is a subconscious state that we go into. And those suggestions that those prayers are giving us have determined a lot of our beliefs and disbeliefs as well. And of course the church doesn't want this information out, because guess what will happen?
They'll lose control.
You know, we like the devils and the hell and the demons and, you know, all of those types of things. But when you really get down to it, we're all just human beings in the past life as well as this life, and the poor ghosts are getting blamed to be all kinds of things that they're not. They're just human beings. So that have gone through their lives with learning and whatnot. And and I also have to say that we create our own diseases, but we can also heal our own diseases as well. We have the power to do that. And again, I've got more podcasts coming up and all kinds of awesome
all kinds of goodies.
Oh, you have no idea. So I hope to have this opportunity again, Tamara, because it's so important to get this information out and for things to start changing for the better.
Absolutely. So where can people find you?
I have a web page. It's brendasharp.com, and that's Sharp with no E, SHARP. Brenda, BRENDA.com.
BrendaSharp.com.
And feel free to give me an email, and it's sharp, SHARP, Brenda@gmail.com.
Perfect.
I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'll include that in the description of the podcast so that people know where to find you. And but otherwise, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and I hope that my book is out soon. So keep your eyes open for I am. Am I? I am.
Can't wait.
I hope that's piqued your interest.
I can't wait, because I've been basically friends with Brenda for, I don't know, over a decade, and we've been talking about this for a very long time. So, and the time is ripe for the work that Brenda is bringing to the table and her book, and people need to know this. And this is really going to open up things for the world. So it's very exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tamara, for having me. And you're a dear friend of mine. I love you.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for listening. And you're going to hear from Brenda again in the future, the very near future. So take care, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.